Welcome to Sports Science Insight, the channel where we break down new scientific studies and turn research into practical knowledge for training, performance, and human function. Today, we are looking at the article, The Impact of Resistance Training on Gluteus Maximus Hypertrophy, a Systematic Review and Meta-Analysis. This study was published in Frontiers in Physiology in 2025, by Krause Neto, Krause, and Gama. The question is simple and very popular. What builds the glutes best? Hip thrust, back squat, leg press? Or do we need a combination of exercises? This review analyzed the scientific evidence on resistance training exercises for gluteus maximus hypertrophy. So this is not just about gym trends or social media claims. It is about what the evidence says regarding glute growth, exercise selection, range of motion, and programming. And if you want more evidence-based breakdowns on strength training, exercise physiology, biomechanics, and performance science, subscribe to Sports Science Insight. Let's break it down. The gluteus maximus is the largest and most powerful muscle in the gluteal region. But it is not only important for appearance. It plays a major role in hip extension, pelvic stability, sprinting, jumping, heavy lifting, and lower body function. When an athlete sprints, jumps, changes direction, or produces force through the hips, the gluteus maximus is one of the key muscles involved. This also matters in rehabilitation. Strong and well-developed glutes can support hip function, pelvic control, and movement quality. So the main message is this: the glutes are not just for appearance. They are performance muscles. That is why understanding how to train them matters for athletes, coaches, fitness professionals, and rehabilitation settings. This study was a systematic review and meta-analysis. The authors searched several major databases, including PubMed, SportDiscus, Scopus, Web of Science, CINAHL, Science Direct, Google Scholar, and ResearchGate. The initial search identified 5,354 articles. After removing duplicates and screening the literature, 12 studies were included in the systematic review. Of those, 11 studies were included in the meta-analysis. The review focused on healthy adults between 18 and 45 years old. The studies had to measure changes in gluteus maximus morphology, such as muscle thickness, muscle volume, or cross-sectional area. The review included no low-quality studies, but the average methodological quality was moderate. So the evidence is useful, but it still needs careful interpretation. The main finding was direct. Resistance training produced a significant increase in gluteus maximus hypertrophy. The overall effect size was SMD equals 0.71, with a 95% confidence interval from 0.50 to 0.91. The result was statistically significant, with P0.00001. In practical terms, this represents a moderate effect. The heterogeneity was low, with I² equals 22%. That means the overall result was relatively consistent across studies. So the big picture is clear: dynamic resistance training can build the gluteus maximus. But the more interesting question is not whether training works. The real question is, which exercises should we choose, and for what goal? The review compared single exercise protocols and combined exercise protocols. Single exercise protocols showed a moderate effect, with SMD equals 0.74. Combined protocols also showed a moderate effect, with SMD equals 0.68. So both approaches can work. A single focused movement, like a hip thrust or squat variation, can stimulate glute growth. A full routine combining single joint and multi-joint exercises can also be effective. This is important because it challenges two common extremes. One extreme says you only need one best exercise. The other says you need many different exercises to grow the glutes. The evidence suggests a more balanced answer. One exercise can work. A combination can work too. Success depends on programming, execution, progression, range of motion, and the individual goal. The barbell hip thrust had a strong practical signal in this review. Several included studies showed that hip thrust training can significantly increase gluteus maximus size. One reason it is so useful is that it targets hip extension with a strong emphasis on the glutes. It may be especially helpful when the goal is to prioritize glute growth while limiting excessive growth in adjacent muscles, such as the quadriceps. The review also suggests that range of motion matters. Fuller range hip thrust variations appear to produce a stronger hypertrophy stimulus than shortened repetitions. Both scoop and hinge variations appear to be effective options, but technique should be adjusted to the person. So the practical message is not that every hip thrust must look exactly the same. The message is, use a hip thrust variation that allows strong glute loading, safe execution, and enough range of motion to create a meaningful stimulus. For targeted glute work, the hip thrust has a strong practical signal. The back squat also showed strong evidence for increasing gluteus maximus hypertrophy. But there is an important detail: depth matters. Studies included in the review suggest that parallel or deeper squats produce a stronger glute hypertrophy signal than shallower versions. This makes sense biomechanically. When the squat is deeper, the hip moves through a larger range of motion, and the gluteus maximus has to contribute more to hip extension. But this does not mean every person should force maximum depth at all costs. Individual anatomy, mobility, injury history, control, and safe technique all matter. A deeper squat is only useful if the athlete can perform it well. So the practical message is, squat depth matters, but individual range matters too. For many people, reaching parallel or slightly below parallel may be enough to create a strong glute stimulus. The goal is not just to squat deep. The goal is to squat deep enough, safely enough, and with enough load and control to stimulate adaptation. The review also discussed other useful tools. The leg press may increase gluteus maximus size, but the evidence is mixed. Some studies found positive effects, while others did not find significant changes. This may depend on the machine, foot position, range of motion, load, and how the exercise is performed. Kneeling hip extension with resistance bands also showed positive effects in one included study. This suggests that banded hip extension exercises can be useful, especially when the goal is a more accessible or lower load option. Progressive bodyweight squat variations also increased glute thickness in untrained women. This is important for beginners, detrained individuals, home training, or rehabilitation settings. So the practical takeaway is this: many exercises can work, but execution changes the stimulus. Range of motion, foot position, load, intent, and progression all influence whether an exercise actually targets the glutes well. Now we need to read the findings carefully. The evidence is useful, but method details matter. The average study quality score was 19.5 out of 29, which indicates moderate quality. Some studies lacked detailed descriptions of exercise technique. That matters because small technique differences can change the training stimulus. Measurement methods also varied across studies. Some studies used ultrasound to measure muscle thickness. Others used MRI to measure muscle volume or cross-sectional area. These methods do not always capture the same thing in the same way. Individual factors also matter. Training status, prior training volume, baseline strength, anatomy, mobility, and exercise experience can influence results. So the message is not, this one exercise is always best for everyone. The better message is, the evidence supports several effective options, but the details of programming and execution determine the result. So, how can we apply this? If the goal is targeted glute emphasis, the hip thrust is a strong primary tool. It is especially useful when the objective is to focus on the gluteus maximus while reducing emphasis on other lower body muscles. If the goal is overall lower body mass and power, deep squats and leg press variations can be useful. They can train the glutes together with the quadriceps and other lower body muscles. If the person is a beginner, detrained, training at home, or in a rehabilitation context, progressive bodyweight and banded exercises may be useful starting points. But the best program does not need to choose only one exercise forever. You can combine single joint and multi-joint movements. You can use hip thrusts for targeted glute loading. You can use squats and leg press for broader lower body development. You can use bands and bodyweight exercises when load tolerance or equipment is limited. The final message is simple. Build the glutes by matching the exercise to the goal. Choose the movement, range of motion, load, and progression based on the person in front of you. If this video helped you understand what the science says about glute training, subscribe to Sports Science Insight. Here, we analyze new scientific studies and turn them into practical knowledge for athletes, coaches, students, and anyone interested in evidence-based performance. Leave your comment below. If you had to choose one main glute exercise, would you choose hip thrust, squat, or leg press? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next breakdown.